fleeing for his life from Mecca, really by outward appearance has no power, no strength, but because of his absolute firm conviction about Allah, he knew very well what would happen. And that was his long-sightedness, and he was teaching that to this man who was a Bedouin warrior and a trapper, and he was giving a new way of looking at the world. So I think that strategic planning is absolutely essential. The United States of America is not in the position that it's in because of some miracle that came down from heaven. The United States has massive strategic planning. In the United States there are 40,000 think tanks. Think tanks are taking scholars who all they do is think. Research, papers. We go, for instance, in many Muslim conferences, you will go and people give talks. There's no papers presented. There's no... And not a whole lot comes out of it. If you go to a conference in the West, it's very different. There's papers, there's a synopsis of what's given, there's planning, there's networking, there's always fruit that comes out of it. And I think that we have to to raise the level of our standards. Personally, one of my concerns is strategic planning. And I have brought this up on several occasions in many events and with many Muslims, and I'm hoping that there will be more cooperation in this area. Unfortunately, Muslims are afflicted by a lot of diseases of the heart, like envy, and so what happens when Muslims attempt to work together, there actually ends up being a kind of undermining, because people don't recognize that there has to be a subduing of the ego. When you're doing Islamic work, you have to really put aside your ego
for the ultimate goal,
for much greater causes and greater concerns. And if we're constantly involved in this pettiness of our own projects and unwilling to sacrifice, I think, just to use an example, I think the most profound aspect of Osama bin Laden for the Muslims, because if Osama bin Laden was an Egyptian cobbler who went to Afghanistan to fight in the jihad, he wouldn't be in his position. The reason that he has been such a romantic figure for so many Muslims is because here's a man who gave up $300 million living in palaces in Saudi Arabia to live in a cave. That's called sacrifice. When people see real sacrifice, they're inspired by it and they want to follow it. And that is the strength of Muslim work. When Muslims see the leaders of Islam, the scholars of Islam, sacrificing in a real way, then they're inspired to follow them. But when you have people that don't sacrifice for the sake of Islam, I mean, Christians, when I was in Africa and I studied in Africa, I met Christians with degrees in medicine from Stanford who were treating Africans living in huts in Africa, sacrificing. These were Americans that could be living in palaces, luxuries, making $200,000 a year, driving a Mercedes, but because of their commitment to Christianity, they were living in an African village, treating the most destitute people on the planet. That is inspiring. When you see that, I don't care if it's a Christian or a Jew or anybody else that does that, that is inspiring because you're seeing real sacrifice. And I think the spirit of tadhiyah, of sacrifice, has in a large way been lost amongst a lot of the Muslims.